Hello. Probably wondering what is this? Well, I decided to do a video. Every once in a while I do a video on a game that I have attempted to design. So thought I'd do one today on a game I designed a couple of years ago. It says SAAB. There was a TV show, a sci-fi TV show on around the middle 90s called Space Above and Beyond. It was only one season, but I really enjoyed that show. And so I don't know, a couple of years ago, around the time COVID started, and I was home a lot, I thought, well, maybe I'll try to design a game based on that. So um, I had to home make this one. Some of the other games that I tried to design, I had printed at the Game Crafter, but because this one had images from an IP, I figured they probably wouldn't do it. So I homemade all the components for this. But anyway, just for fun, I thought I'd show it. I think it's actually probably my best one, even though none of them are great. I think this is my best one. All right, so we'll talk about setup. First thing, both players it's a two-player game. One player will choose to be the Earth Forces, and they'll take the Earth Forces playmat. They will take their starting card of Earth and their starting card medical scan. You notice my printer, I think I didn't have it set right, and so when it printed on these cards that I made, some of the ink rubbed off on some of them. So I finally ended up spraying them with like a clear coat thing, so it quit doing that, but it makes some of the print obviously not look very well. Anyway, the Earth Forces player takes their player mat, their starting map card of Earth, and their starting card medical scan. They will take their ACM card deck, which is an Air Combat Maneuver deck, shuffle that, put it in their play area. Take their grunt deck, which is basically their ground combat cards, shuffle that, put it in their play area. They'll then take their marine tokens, which kind of look like they've got a marine on them, and the back is like the Earth Forces flag symbol. So there's several of those tokens. They'll take their SA-43 tokens. Again, they have that same symbol on the back. This is like the space fighter jet that the Earth Forces used in this show, SA-43. So there's several of those tokens. You get your ISS ACP tokens. These were like transport ships for the Earth Forces. Take your Pearly token. That was kind of like a tank-like vehicle. Get your John Lacey Beach battleship token. You take your carrier tokens. There's three of them: the Eisenhower, Yorktown, and the Saratoga. That was like the main ship in the TV show. And the Saratoga, you place it in one of the sectors around Earth. So we'll just say we're going to place it there. You take your 6 members of the 58th Squadron. That was Lieutenants West, Vanson, Wang, Hawks, and Damphus, and their Commander McQueen. These were kind of like the stars of the show. And they all go on the Saratoga. And finally, you take your Butts token and just place that in your play area. Take your 4 turn tokens, just place them on the player mat where you're above the action track. When you take actions, you'll place those over actions so you know how many actions you've taken. But for setup, you just place them somewhere on your player mat near the action track. And finally, you take your resource counter tokens and just place them right next to the resource track. As you gain material, morale, and fuel, you'll use those to track that on the map. Alright, kind of the opponent and enemy in the show was the aliens called the Chigs. So the other player will take the Chig player mat. They'll take the Chig home planet card and just place that somewhere near their play area. We'll take the Chig ACM deck, shuffle it, and place that somewhere near your play area. Take the Chig Grunt deck. Again, that's going to be their ground combat cards. Shuffle those and place that in your play area. And you can kind of see a little bit what the aliens looked at in their, I guess, space suits or armor. You'll take your Chig soldier tokens and place them near you. Again, you can see the ink kind of rubbed off of my tokens there. I did since spray them with a clear coat, but they already look pretty bad. But, you know, homemade. You take the Chig fighter tokens. That was the alien fighter spacecraft. Place those in your play area. Take the Chig officer tokens. They look similar to the Chig soldier tokens, but they have a red kind of circle around them and some red markings on their armor. Take your Chig transport tokens. That's kind of like their transport vehicle, troop transport vehicles. Put those in your play area. Take the Chig bomber tokens and place those in your area. Take the AI tokens. Those were like artificial intelligent, you know, kind of androidy type enemy figures that were allied with the Chigs. And so, anyway, they're another enemy ground troop. So you take your AI tokens, place them in your play area. Alright, then you take your U-378. There's some miscellaneous tokens. You got your U-378, which is like a stealth destroyer type vehicle. Chiggy von Richthofen token, which he's kind of like a fighter ace creature. You got your ammo dump token and your T-77 token, which is kind of like the Chig tank vehicle. And all of those will just go in your play area. Just to mention, normally you'd be sitting on opposite sides of a table, so even though here in my area I've got my Earth Forces player and Chig player kind of sitting this way, the map, if you're playing really, you'd be on opposite sides of the table, so the Chig Homeworld card would be over here. Finally, you take your Chig Battleship Group tokens. There's 3 of those. Put 2 of them in your play area, and then Chig player will choose one sector next to the Chig home planet to place a Chig Battleship Group token in. And you'll place the Chig turn markers somewhere near their action track, and the Chig resource markers near their tracks again for material, morale, and food. Not food, fuel. Although, I don't know, I guess food could be something, but no, fuel. Alright, almost done. And you have 3 event decks. You've got the Above and Beyond deck. You'll shuffle that and put that in reach of all the players. You have the Abandon All Hope deck, which you'll shuffle that and put that in reach of all the players. And finally the Round Hammer deck, which you will shuffle and put within reach of all players. And those represent kind of early episodes, mid-season episodes, and late season episodes. And finally, you just set your dice, Walden line markers, your damage tokens, and then these are just additional troop markers. Like if you run out of tokens, you can use this to indicate you've got +3 Marines, or this side to indicate you got +3 Chig forces. So anyway, just put those somewhere near all the players. Alright, and that is set up, and then you are ready to play. So how do you play? Oh, and here's my little rule set that I made. It's got like a little saying that was said at the beginning of the series by the actor that played, Colonel T.C. McQueen. And anyway, these are my rules. So anyway, let me get started with how you play. Alright, well, the game is played over a series of rounds. The first thing you'll do around is draw from the current event deck. So you always start with the above and beyond deck. When that's empty, you move to the abandon all hope deck, and finally you go to the round hammer deck. So first, both players, each player will draw one card from the current event deck. Then you'll look for the number on the card. This one's an 11. Again, the printing is not good, but it was homemade. And this one's a 17. So the lowest card gets to activate their event first. So this card, being the lower card, would get to activate first. Now in this case, this evacuation card is not helpful to anybody since it's the beginning of the game. It says the Chig player may evacuate any or all Chig forces from one planet back to their home planet. If no forces are evacuated with this card, the Earth Forces player may immediately initiate an attack. This does not count as an action. But since at the beginning of the game and no players got forces anywhere, that's pretty much a worthless card, so it would just go into the discard pile. Then the next player would get to read his card. So this event card is Loyalty Test. Lieutenant Hawks and Lieutenant Colonel McQueen may not move or participate in combat this round. They may submit to a loyalty test by rolling a 1d10. They pass on a 6+. If they fail, they are out of play for one additional round. Thematically, this was Lieutenant Hawks and Lieutenant McQueen were in vitros, kind of artificially gestated humans, and they were kind of considered less than. They were kind of more like created to be workers, and anyway, they were considered to be a lower class than regular humans. So there's one episode where their loyalty was in question. Anyway, so I'm just trying to explain the theme behind this. But in this case, unfortunately, neither one of these event cards really has much bearing. But I mean, this one, if Lieutenant Hawks and McQueen, who are members of the 58th Squadron on the Saratoga, they can't move or participate in combat this round. This earlier in the game, they probably wouldn't anyway. So now that card will just be discarded. But you do remember who had the lower number, because that's who gets to go first when you initiate actions. So that would be the Earth Forces player. They chose Evacuation, which had the lower number this round. Some of the cards you may draw during the event card draw may be a planet or a star system card. If you draw one of those, then the player that drew it gets to place it to help build and expand the map. So in this case, if the Earth Force player had drawn this, he could place this planet Tellus anywhere adjacent to the Earth card. So, he may place it there. Then he would draw another event card. So when you draw a planet or star system card, you get to place it, and then you draw another event card in its place. Now, initially, as planet or system cards are drawn, they all have to be placed adjacent to Earth or adjacent to a card that has been placed next to Earth. So the next card drawn could either be placed adjacent to Earth or adjacent to Tellus. No card can be placed adjacent to the Chig homeworld at this point. Once there are at least 2 vertical map cards, once you've got two cards vertically above Earth, you can then place the Walden line marker. After that's been placed, then any further planet or system cards that are drawn can then start being placed next to the Chig homeworld or adjacent to cards that are on the other side of the Walden line. And I have 2 markers, so if your map is more spread out than this, you can have 2 Walden line markers. But eventually, the Chig homeworld will be separated by 3 cards. There always have to be 3 cards that separate system or planet cards that separate the Chig homeworld from the Walden line. So as you go through the first event deck, you may end up, with this kind of map. Again, like I said, there'll always be 2 cards separating the Walden line from Earth, and then 3 cards separating the Walden line from the Chig home planet. Now there's more system and event cards that'll be in the other decks that'll get placed also. So as you play the game, your map will grow larger and larger. A few of these system and planet cards have some special rules, like Mars says it must be placed adjacent to Earth if possible. So unless Earth is already surrounded by cards when you draw Mars, you have to place it adjacent to Earth. And the cards that have this symbol, those are all planets. If it has more star-like system, that one is a star system, not a planet. And then, of course, there's something like this, the Cerberus black hole, which is obviously a black hole. Okay, so again, at the beginning of the round, each player will draw an event card. The lower event card will take effect first, and also the player with the lower numbered event card will take their actions first. So anyway, after both players have drawn and done their event cards, the next thing you'll do is collect resources. So each planet you control, and you control a planet if you are the only side that has ground forces on it. So at the beginning of the game, Earth and the Chig home planet, even though they don't have ground forces, you always get to collect resources from your home planet unless another faction has forces there. So at the beginning of the game you have no forces, but you always get to collect resources from your home planet. Thereafter, any planet you control, which again is a planet that you only have forces on, ground forces on, you'll get to collect resources from that. And the resources you collect are listed here. So at the beginning of the game for Earth, you'd get 3 material, 3 morale, 3 fuel, and 1 marine. So you just move your marker up to 3 on the material, 3 on the morale, 3 on the fuel, and then you get 1 marine. So then you would take a marine token and place it on Earth. And similarly, the Chig home planet also gives 3 material, 3 morale, 3 fuel, and 1 Chig soldier. And so this is all done simultaneously, collecting your resources. So they would get to put 1 Chig soldier on their home planet. Again, first turn of the game, all these other map cards wouldn't be out here. I just did that as an example. Later in the game, when you control more planets, you can see, Mars gives you 2 material and 2 fuel. Groombridge 34 gives you 1 marine, 1 material, and 1 fuel. Now, anytime a planet gives you, like here, this planet gives you a marine, that marine has to be placed on that planet. It doesn't get to go on any other planet. And if the opponent controls that, like if the Chigs controlled this planet, since obviously they don't get marines, they get soldiers, they would just not get that 1 marine, but they would get the +1 material, 1 fuel. So anyway, in the collect resources phase, you add up all the resources from all the planets that you control and move the markers up appropriately on your track. First turn of the game, you would only have 3, 3, and 3 because you would only control your home planet, and the Chig player would control their home planet. And all this is listed on the player mat. So for a round, you draw event cards, collect resources. The next thing you do is spend resources. So when you spend resources, you can buy things like, well, that's all here on the player mat. You can buy, the Earth Forces player can spend 3 material to buy 1 SA-43, which, remember, that is their fighter vehicle. Whenever you buy an SA-43, it has to be put in a sector adjacent to a planet you control. So again, at the beginning of the game, you can only put it in one of the sectors around Earth, or you can place it on a carrier that you have in play. So, we could put this on the Saratoga because that's the only carrier we have in play at the beginning of the game. So once you spend the material, 1, 2, 3, at this point he wouldn't be able to buy anything else. Of course, later, as you control more planets, you'll have more material and you can build more things. So you can build a Marine for 2 morale. So spend 2 morale. You can get a Marine, and then you can put that on any planet you control. So again, at the beginning, that's only Earth. Or if you purchase a Marine, you can also, besides putting it on a planet you control, you could also put it on a carrier that you control. Or as far as the Chigs, they could put it on a battleship group that they control. Okay, for 1 morale, you can buy an ACM card or a grunt card. Now these cards are used when you get into fighter combat or ground combat. So, if you wanted to buy, if you had 2 morale, you could spend both and maybe buy 1 ACM card and 1 grunt card. Now these are played when you're in, most of them are played either when you're in space combat or when you're in ground combat. Some of them let you play as an action, but like for this one, Look Alive, says play before combat rolls. Choose 1 SA-43 to make an attack against each Chig fighter before normal combat. This one, play before combat rolls. Choose 1 Marine that may not be attacked this combat round. So anyway, your ACM and grunt cards are used when you are in space or ground combat. So it's good to have those. You can have a maximum of in your hand of 5 of each, so you can never have more than 5 ACM cards or 5 grunt cards in your hand at one time. You can buy one that gives you more, but then you have to discard. And then anytime these are played, obviously they're discarded. You can spend 2 material to buy an ISS ACP. Again, that's the transport vehicle for the Earth Forces. When you spend material for an ISS ACP, you can either put that in a sector around a planet you control or on a planet you control. And mostly those are used to transport troops from one planet to another planet. For tin material, you can buy another carrier. There's also, you start with the Saratoga, you can buy another carrier, the Yorktown or the Eisenhower. That's the most you could ever have in play at one time. Of course, if one gets destroyed, then later you can spend tin material to purchase it back, basically. Whenever you spend material to purchase a carrier, it always has to start out in a sector around your home planet. And the Chigs are very similar. You can spend 3 material for a fighter, 2 morale for a Chig soldier, 1 morale for one of their ACM cards. Here's one, for instance. I put some kind of alien writing on there, but this one's play before combat rolls. Before the start of combat, 1 SA-43 must return to the nearest carrier. Or here's one of their ground combat cards. That looks like a Chig in a foxhole of some sort. Play before combat rolls. All Marines have a -1 attack modifier to their combat rolls this round. So again, you can spend morale to buy ACM and grunt cards. And again, for the Chigs, it's the same, a 5 card of each type hand limit. Um, they can buy, the one thing they have different is they have the AIs. They can buy those AI soldiers for two material, and similar as buying the soldiers of the Marines. They have to go on a planet you control, or um, on a battleship carrier group token that the Chigs have. And what else? Transport. They have the transport that works similar to the ISS ACP that the Earth forces have. When you buy one of those, it has to go on planet you control or in a sector adjacent to a planet you control. They can buy a battleship group, one of these for 10 material. And again, when you buy that, it has to start out next to the Chig home planet, just like the carrier for the Earth forces. They also have the bomber, which costs 5 material, and that has to go adjacent when you buy that, just like the Chig fighter. It has to go either on a battleship carrier group or in a sector adjacent to a planet you control. And then they also have the Chig officers that they can buy for 5 morale. And the Chig officers give a +1 modifier to all Chig soldiers' combat roles that they're with. Alright, so that pretty much explains the spend resources. So again, that's simultaneously. So you draw your event cards at the beginning of the round. Depending on the lower number, you read it and do your event card first. Then simultaneously, both players collect their resources. Both players collect their spend their resources. Finally, you get to your action rounds. The player that had the lowest card number, event card number, gets to take their 4 actions first. You get to take 4 actions. With those, you can move, play a card. That's, as I said, some of these cards say play as an action. So if you have a card that lets you play as an action, or the Earth Forces starts with the medical scan card, which they can play as an action, and that lets them revive a member of the 58th, which that's their, the main characters of the game for the Earth Forces. So if they end up getting eliminated in combat, the Earth Forces player can play this medical scan card to revive one of them. When they're revived, they go back to the Saratoga if it's in play. If it's not in play, they go on any carrier that is in play. If there's no carriers in play, they go to Earth. Then this card, if the Earth Forces player plays this card as an action to revive a member of the 58th, this card will get shuffled into the next event deck, so they'll have the opportunity to get it again. After it's in the, if they draw it when it's in the round hammer deck, then and play it, then it's just out of the game after that. Alright, other actions they can do is land or load Marines. We'll talk about that more in detail in a second. Or you can attack or you can repair. So anytime you take an action, remember you get 4 actions per round. Put one of your action markers on that to show that you've taken that action. So again, let's talk about one of the actions you can do is move. Alright. It costs 1 action to move a space vehicle. So if you wanted to move this SA-43, that's going to be 1 action. But it also costs fuel. So you can look here, moving an SA-43 costs 2 fuel to move at 1 space. So if you had 9 fuel, you could spend 2 fuel and move 1 space. All movement must be orthogonal. You can't move diagonal. So you could spend 1 action to move this 1 SA-43 1 space, and that would cost you 2 fuel. Now, if you have multiple vehicles in a space, you can move all of them for 1 action. So if you chose to spend your 1 action to move both of these SA-43s, as long as they start in the same space and end in the same space, you can do that for 1 action. But you still have to spend the fuel for both of them. So that would cost 4 fuel to move both of those SA-43s. So 1, 2, 3, 4, one space. But it's only one action. And you can move any number of vehicles from one space to another space for one action as long as they start in the same space and end in the same space. The ISS ACPs, they're similar to the SA-43s. They take two fuel to move one space. The carrier and the battleship John Lacey Beach is a little different because they're nuclear powered. They don't cost any fuel to move, but they can only move a maximum of two spaces per round. So if you spent another action, you can move two spaces, but that's as far as it can go for that round. Again, the next round it can move again. The Chig's movement is a little bit different. They can spend one fuel to move their fighters two spaces. Their bombers and transports take two fuel to move one space, and their battleship groups take two fuel to move one space. But they're not limited to a number of spaces per round like the Earth carriers are. Alright, you can spend an action to play a card. As I said, some of these ACM and Grunt cards will say play as an action. So, for instance, this one, you can move all SA-43s and ISS ACPs in the same square or sector, is probably what it should say, as Vanson. Remember, Vanson is a member of the 58th. Now, I haven't mentioned, but the members of the 58th, they can be ground troops, but you can flip them over, and they're also fighter troops. So if you had Vanson, where is she? If you had Vanson out in a sector in her SA-43, good Lord. Oh, well, let me just get that. You could play this card as an action and move her and all SA-43s in the same square at no fuel cost. But again, that's one action to play that card, and then it would be discarded. I didn't mention this, but as I said, the members of the 58th can be ground troops or fighter troops. They're the only ones that can do that. Otherwise, you have to have Marine or SA-43. But I said when you spend resources to build fighters, you can also put them on, instead of putting them adjacent to a planet you control, you can also put them on a carrier. So for one action, you can launch all SA-43s from a carrier into the same space, which is kind of hard because the spaces aren't very big, but into the same space or an adjacent space. If you did that, you would turn all these guys over to their SA-43 side. Anyway, you can launch SA-43s for an action from a carrier into the same space as the carrier or an adjacent space as the carrier, all for one action and only one fuel, no matter how many you launch. Alright, another action you can do is land or load Marines. So, if you have Marines on a planet and you want to get them to another planet, and you have an ISS ACP on that planet, for one action, you can load those Marines onto the ISS ACP, up to 5. That's the most that can go on an ACCP. For one action, you can load them onto the ACP and move it into an adjacent sector. But it does cost one fuel for moving that ASS, or actually it's 2 fuel for an ASS ACP to move into that adjacent space. Then, you can, for another action, spend fuel and move your ISS ACP again. And when you're ready to land, that's enough for another action. You can land. Again, you got to spend the fuel to land, but then those soldiers immediately unload on that planet, and they're considered to be on the planet. The ISS ACP remains on the planet until you spend actions and fuel to launch it and take it, maybe to go pick up some more troops. And that works exactly the same for the Chig transports, so they can, load Chig soldiers or AIs on a planet and fly them to another planet and unload them on a planet, just similar to what I showed there. All right, another action you can do is attack. So if you take an action to attack, so if Chig soldiers or Chig AI and Marines are on a planet together, that doesn't mean there's automatically a combat. It's only if somebody spends an action to initiate an attack. Now, if both of them are on there, then nobody controls it, so nobody would be collecting the resources for that planet in a collect resources phase. But if somebody on their turn does spend an action to initiate an attack, then in this case, that would be ground combat because you got your Marines against your soldiers. You'd have your first round of attack, so each player would have an opportunity to play one grunt card, since this is ground combat, in this round. So maybe the Earth Forces player would say, I'm going to play this card, M70 pistol. Before combat, choose one Marine, add +2 to their attack roll this round. So he would choose one of his Marines, and he would roll for him separately because you're going to be rolling +2 to his combat roll this round. Anyway, so when Marines and Chigs are in combat, it shows here that Marines will roll D6 and hit on 5+. So, he has 3 Marines, so he would roll 3 D6. Chig soldiers are the same in combat. They roll D6s and hit on 5+. Now again, because the Marine player, Earth Forces player played this card, he'd go ahead and choose one soldier and get to roll his roll first. So 4, but he gets to add +2, so that's a 6. So he would get a hit, so that would be 1 hit. Then the other 2 Marines there would get to roll. They got a 4 and 3, so only 1 hit. Then the Chig soldier, they would get to roll their 3 dice. Remember, they hit on 5+ also, so they would get hit. So they would each get 1 hit. But then the Chig soldier still has their grunt card that they can play for this combat round, so they would play maybe this one. After casualties have been taken during combat round, eliminate 1 additional Marine. So the Earth Forces player would have to eliminate 2, and the Chig forces would just be eliminating. What did I get? I don't remember. I think I just got 1 hit. I can't remember. Anyway, so if both forces still have soldiers in the combat, you fight another round. Since it's another round, you could play an additional combat card that round you want. Anyway, you can continue to have rounds of combat until only 1 or no players have troops remaining, and then that ends the combat. And space combat between fighters is very similar. SA-43s and Chig fighters. Again, you can play, well, we already saw that combat card, but you get, for each round of combat, you can play 1 ACM combat card. So this one play after combat roll. We haven't talked about Jink, but we'll talk about that. But again, you have an opportunity for each round of combat between fighters to play an ACM combat card. Now they don't roll the same dice. So SA-43s, if they're making a regular cannon attack, they roll a D10 and hit on 6+, whereas Chig fighters roll a D6 and hit on 5+. The SA-43s can sometimes make a missile attack if you have a card, an ACM card that lets you make a missile attack. And if you do that, you're rolling a d10 and hitting on a 5+. The Chig fighters don't have any missile attack. Now the one difference here in fighter combat is if one of your fighters takes a hit, it doesn't immediately count as a hit. You have an opportunity to jink or avoid the combat. So it costs you a fuel if you take a hit. If your fighter takes a hit, you can spend one fuel to make a jink roll. So for the Earth forces, they roll a d10, and on a 7+, they jink it or avoid it, and then so that they don't actually take the hit. The Chig fighters, similarly, they roll a d6, and they only jink the roll if they actually get a 6. Some ACM cards can give you bonuses to your jink roll, or make you not have to spend the fuel, because you do have to spend a fuel normally for a jink roll. And for fighters, it just takes one hit. If it's not jinked, it just takes one hit to destroy it. And just like the ground combat, after the first round, if there's still fighters remaining on one side, you do another round at no additional action cost. You do another round, you have another opportunity to play an ACM card until there's only one side with fighters remaining. Now, carriers and battleships and Chig battleships are a little bit different. They can attack into adjacent sectors, and if they're attacking like fighters, if the Saratoga was attacking these Chig fighters, because they're not in the same sector, they're out of range for their weapons. They don't have an opportunity to fire back. So the battleships and carriers, again, they can attack fighters or enemies that are in their own sector, or they can attack into an adjacent sector. And the carriers for the Earth forces roll 5d10s when they attack and hit on 5+, and the Chig battleships roll 5d6s and hit on 5+. The battleships and carriers do take more than one hit. The Chig battleship takes up to 7 hits before it's destroyed. The Earth Forces carrier takes up to 5 hits before it's destroyed, and those hits are marked with these damage tokens. So if the Saratoga had 2 damage, you'd put 2 damage on there. If it had 3, you'd put a 2, and the one without them, number 2 is just 1, so it has 3 damage. Now, if there was a Chig battleship in this sector, because they can both attack in adjacent sectors, then of course, the Chig battleship would be able to fire back. If you're attacking something that can't fire back because it's out of range, for instance, if the Saratoga was attacking these fighters, after the first round of combat, they have an opportunity to spend fuel to move to an adjacent sector if they can, so they become out of range since they can't fire back. Nor if you're in the same sector and you're having combat, the battles just continue combat round after combat round until one side is defeated. But if you're being attacked by something that's out of your range, then after the first round of combat, if there's any surviving ships, they can spend fuel to move. So I think that pretty much covers combat. So another action you can do is repair. So I showed that the Chig battleship groups or the carriers can take damage, and if they're not destroyed but they have damage, they can spend actions. If they are in a sector adjacent to a planet that they control, they can spend an action to repair, and they can repair 1 point of damage for 2 material. So, if they want to repair both these points of damage, it would cost them 4 material, 1 action and 4 material to do that. There's a few differences in combat we didn't talk about over here. The AI soldiers, they're not as good as the Chig soldiers, so they roll a D4 and only hit on 4 plus, so they're not very good. The Chig bombers, they can only attack carriers, battleships, and planets. And what I mean by planets is they can be in a sector adjacent to a planet and attack the planet, and any damage, any hits they get are applied to Marines on that planet. So they can bomb a planet and kill Marines, and the Marines have no method of attacking back, nor no method of retreat unless they have an ISS-ACP there, and then they could spend fuel to try to retreat. But when a bomber attacks a carrier battleship or planet, they roll 2d10s, they hit on a 6 plus, but they do 2 damage per hit, so that's pretty good. Um, the Chig forces, can have that The U-378 is not something that can be built in the spend resources. There's an action or an event card that brings that into play. Um, but it gets to roll 2d6 and hits on a 4 plus. It can take up to 2 hits, but its special thing is its stealth, so it can't be attacked until it has attacked, and its initial attack is before a combat round. So if it destroys what it's attacking, then on its first round of combat, then the opponent is attacking doesn't even get to fire back. But if it survived, then you go into normal combat and it can be attacked as normal. There's Chiggy von Richthofen. Like I said, he's the Chig ace. He has special powers, and he comes into play via an event card. So one of the few things we haven't talked about is, of course, the members of the 58th Squadron, who are the main characters of the show. They do have some bonuses in ground and air combat. So Lieutenant Vanson gets +1 to ground attack, +2 to her Jink rolls, and +2 to her ACM combat rolls. Lieutenant West gets +1 to ground, +1 to Jink, +2 to ACM. As you can see, Ray Butts, he's a character that comes in through an event card. He has some bonuses. McQueen is obviously the best. And then Vanson can be promoted through an event to a captain, and when she's promoted to captain, she can roll twice and take the better roll. So they do get some bonuses. And I didn't mention this, but when they're in combat, when if they have other Marines or fighters with them, whenever their side takes a hit, the opponent can't choose them to take the hit unless there's no other, like if they're in ground combat, they can't be chosen to take the hit unless there's no other regular Marines in the combat, or if they're, in air combat, they can't be chosen to take the hit unless there's no other regular SA-43s in the combat. But if they're eliminated, they go out of the game. Again, there's methods where they can possibly come back. There's this event card, and I remember there's some other event cards that can bring them back. There are event cards that will place the 58th Squadron on a certain planet or carrier, and doesn't matter where they are. If an event card says place the 58th on Tartarus, any surviving members of the 58th, no matter where they are removed from where they are and placed on Tartarus. Now, if somebody's eliminated, they don't get automatically revived and placed. They just remain out. So anyway, that's how the game's played. You play until either one player has taken over the opponent's home planet, or until the last card in the Roundhammer event deck is drawn, and then whoever controls the most planets at that point is the winner. So that's the game, and we'll play a couple of example rounds. Alright, I think I got everything set back up how it should be at the beginning of the game. So again, in the beginning of the round, both players draw an event card. So this is the Earth Forces drawn card. This is the Chig's drawn card. You look which number is lower, 33, 26. So the Chig's event card goes first. Spencer Chartwell is dead. Secretary General's been assassinated. Earth Force's morale is lowered by 2. Well, luckily it's the beginning of the game and they don't have any morale to be lowered. The Saratoga and the 58th Squadron are placed at Earth. Well, again, that doesn't matter right now because they are already at Earth. But if that was drawn later in the game and you were in a important spot, that might be detrimental. So anyway. Nothing to remember other than that their card is lower, and so they'll take their 4 actions first. All right, the Earth Forces drew this, U-378, Alien Class 3 Destroyer Hunter Killer. If the Canis Majora star system has not yet been revealed, find it in this deck and place it. All right, so we got to look for Canis Majora star system in this deck and find it and replace it, and then reshuffle the deck. Okay, and because the Earth Forces player drew this card, they get to decide where to place it. Now remember, all cards must be placed adjacent to Earth until the Walden line is placed. All cards must be placed adjacent to Earth or adjacent to a card that is connected to Earth. So we'll just say he's going to place that here. Now, it's kind of not very helpful. You can't control it. You don't get any resources from it, so it's just for moving. But anyway, then shuffle. The Chig player may place his U-378 in the Canis Majora star system. So that's how that comes into play. So he gets to take his U-378 Destroyer Hunter Killer. Remember, that's the one that can be stealth. This image, it's kind of like that's like a big sun in the background. So anyway, we'll say he places it there. All right, so that's the event. Now we go to collect resources. Both players have their home planet only, so I just know they get 3 of each resource, and the Earth Forces get 1 Marine. Chigs get 3 of each resource for their home planet, and they get 1 soldier on their home planet. Alright, spend resources. So I think the Earth Forces are going to spend their 3 material to build an SA-73 right here because they're worried about this U-378 coming in. Now that can't attack from an adjacent sector. It would actually have to move in there to attack that SA-43. And they'll spend 2 morale, 1 for 1 ACM card, and 1 for 1 grunt card. Alright, any forces that the Chig player creates right now have to go to his home planet because he has no other place to put them, and they have to go there because that's the only planet they control right now. So we'll say he's going to spend 3 material, and he's going to build a Chig fighter. He's going to put that on his Chig battleship group, and maybe he's not going to spend any morale or fuel at this point. So that's spend resources. So now we go to actions. The Chig player had the lower event card, so he gets to take his actions first. Unfortunately, earlier in the game there's not a whole lot he can do. He can move his U-378, so we'll have him do that. He's going to take 1 action. And I don't have this listed on my player sheet thing. I probably should, but I do believe I have it in the rules where that U-378 spends 2 fuel to move 1 space. So he's going to spend 2 fuel, and he's going to move in here. Then he's going to spend 1 point to attack. Now remember, because he's stealthed, he gets his initial attack without the opponent being able to roll combat rolls back at him. So he goes rolls 2d6 and hits on a 4+. The Earth Forces player says, he gets to play a combat card. So he's going to play this where he can make up to 2 jink rolls at no fuel cost. So let's see what happens. Well, he may not play that. He'll only play it if he gets hit. So he does get hit. That's a 4+. So he gets 1 hit. So he is going to play this card. He gets to make up to 2 jink rolls at no fuel cost. So to jink, he rolls a d10 and just successful on 7+. He gets to make 2 because of that card. But unfortunately, he's not successful. So this card gets discarded and he's eliminated. Alright, he's going to spend another action. Oh, well, I was going to spend another action to move in over here where the Saratoga is and make an attack. That would probably be suicide, but he doesn't have enough fuel. It costs 2 fuel and he's only got 1, so I think that's going to be it for his actions. Now, because the U-378 is stealthed again until it's attacked, the Saratoga really can't attack it. But we know something went on over there, so maybe the Earth Forces player is going to spend 1 action, and they're going to launch fighters from the Saratoga. Remember, they can launch in the same sector or adjacent sector any number of fighters for 1 action and 1 fuel. So we'll just say they're going to send Vanson and West over there. Now, until they're attacked, they don't know that that thing is there, so they can't really make an attack roll. So really, that's pretty much the only action. Early on, you're probably not going to take all your actions because there's not much to do. So that's going to end. I think that's the only action they're going to take. That's going to end that round. Alright, next round, both players will draw an event card. That's the Earth Forces. That's the Chig player, so we look for the number 30 and 9, so the Chig player will get to play theirs first. If Mars is not revealed, find it in this deck and place it, then reshuffle the deck. Alright, here's Mars. Now remember, it has to be placed adjacent to Earth, so it couldn't be placed over here. The Chig player drew it, so he gets to choose where it goes, so he could choose here, here, or back here. There's really not room on my table to put it back here, so we'll just say he's going to place it here. And then place 2 Chig soldiers on Mars. So he gets to place 1, 2 Chig soldiers. So currently he controls that planet, so he'll get to get those resources. Alright, we'll have to remember he's going to get to take his actions first because he's the lower card. Alright, the Earth player, this is not us. If Tartarus is in play, which it's not, that's a planet, and there are Earth forces located there, then the Earth forces lose 2 morale. Otherwise, the Earth forces loses 1 morale. Well, so Earth forces lose 1 morale, so that's going to put them at 0, and that's all for this card. Okay, then we go to collect resources. Well, we know the Earth's going to get 3 of each. 1, 2, 3. And 1 soldier on Earth. Now the Chig player, we know he's going to get 3 of each, but he's also going to get 2 more material and 2 more fuel. So he's going to get 5 material, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fuel, and 1, 2, 3 morale. Alright, well the Chig player is going to spend 1, 2, 3 and buy a Chig fighter. Place it here next to Mars. Remember, you can place it adjacent to any planet you control. And he's going to spend 2 morale and put another Chig soldier there. And I think he's going to spend 2 morale to get 1 ACM and 1 grunt card in his hand. Alright, I think the Earth Forces player is going to spend 1, 2, 3 material to build a SA-43, and he'll spend 1, 2 morale to put another Marine at Earth. because he's kind of worried about those Chigs already being so close here to Earth. Alright, well, the Chig player, since they have the lower event card, they get to take their actions first. So for his first action, he's going to spend one action to attack these. Actually, Wes is supposed to be in SA-43 right now. To attack these SA-43s. Remember, he gets his, because he's stealth, his first combat roll is before normal combat. So actually, you know what? Because it's before normal combat, I probably shouldn't have got to use that combat card because those are in normal combat. So anyway, he gets to roll 2d6, hits on 4+. He got one hit. So remember, he's got to choose somebody that other than a member of the 58, so he chooses this guy. But this guy can spend a fuel to jink, so he's going to spend one fuel. Because he's not a member of the 58, he doesn't get any bonus to his jink rolls, so he rolls a d10 and jinks on 7+. Boy, does this dice only roll 3s? I'm going to grab another dice going forward. Anyway, so he gets hit. Now we have a normal round of combat, because now he's revealed himself. So, unfortunately, I don't have any ACM cards. The Chig player does, but that's as an action ACM card, so no ACM cards are going to be able to be played. So again, he gets to roll his 2d6 and hit on 4+. So he's going to get one hit, but we'll see who is going to jink it. But we have Vanson and West. So SA-43s, they roll d10s and hit on 6+, but Vanson and West both have +2 to their ACM, so they get to add +2 to their roll. So we'll roll 2d10s. That is a hit, and it's normally hit on 6, but he gets +2, so that's 2 hits, which that's all this guy's hull is 2. But he did get one hit, so he gets to choose who he's going to, the attacker gets to choose who he hit. So he's going to choose West because Vanson gets +2 to her jink roll, and West only gets +1. So he does get to spend a fuel and make a jink roll. So again, he rolls a d10 and normally 7+, but since he gets +1, a 6+, he gets to jink. He jinks it, so he's not hit. So those members of the 58th survive, and the U-378 is destroyed. Really not pretty. Let's see what this one he could play as an action. Move up to 3 Chig fighters at no fuel cost. He's only got one here. That one can't really move over here at this point till we get the Walden line play. So again, pretty much early in the game, not too many actions are going to be done. So he's probably not going to do any more actions. So we'll come to the Earth Forces player. He's going to take an action, and he's going to fire from the Saratoga. Remember, it can attack an adjacent sector. So he gets to roll 5d10 and hit on 5+. And yeah. Oh, and I didn't mention, but in this game, zeros are not 10s. Zeros are a misfire, so any zeros are actually not hits. But he did get a 9 and a 5, so 2 hits. It only takes 1 hit to kill a fighter, though he does get to try to jink each hit, so he spends 1 fuel. Now their jink is roll a d6 and jink on a 6+, so probably not likely. No. So he's destroyed. The Earth Forces, they're going to spend another action to launch and move all of these guys They can launch into an adjacent sector. That's one action and one fuel to do that. Now I'd like to land on that planet, but it's going to take one fuel for each of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, to land on that planet, and I've only got 2 fuel, and I don't want to just send 2 soldiers down there. Remember, these guys can turn into soldiers, the members of the 58. So I think I'll hold off on that for this round, and I'll spend one more action to spend 2 fuel, 1, 2. Remember, it costs 2 fuel to move SA-43 a space. I'm going to move Vanson into here. Alright, so that's going to be the end of this round, I think. Alright, we'll do one more round. So this is draw event cards. That's the Earth Forces. That's the Chigs. We look for the number. This one, I don't know why I did it in a darker color, but that's 3. This one is 35. Again, you can see the ink got rubbed off of it. So the Earth Forces, this card will go first. Your bet my game blackjack. Each player rolls 3d10. The player closest to 21 without. The reason this is thematic is the AIs like to gamble. So anyway, there is an episode where they did this, your bet my game blackjack. So anyway, each player rolls 3d10. The player closest to 21 without going over is the winner. The winner may eliminate up to 5 enemy AI or Earth forces. Chig soldiers may not be eliminated, nor members of the 58. So only AI and regular Marines. Well, we don't have any of those. So there's really no point in playing this because I can only eliminate enemy AIs and there aren't any. And members of the 58 can't be eliminated, and I don't have any regular. Well, I do have regular Marines, so it is worth playing. If the Chig player wins, he can eliminate those Marines I have on Earth. So, all right. So each player rolls 3d10. All right, this is the Earth forces. You got 6, 7, 8, 13. Oh, that was a 7. Now that's 15. All right, so 15. All right, for the Chig player, only 10. So the Earth Force player wins, but there's no AIs to eliminate, so that really doesn't matter. But we will remember because he had the lower card number, he gets to take his actions first. All right, the Chig player got Vesta attack. If Vesta is not yet revealed, find it in the deck and place it. Alright, so here's Vesta. The Chig player, since it's his card, he gets to place it. He could place it here, here. Anyway, he's going to place it here because he wants the Walden line to get placed, because now that way he can start moving forces over here. So once the second vertical card from Earth is placed, you can place the Walden line. So we'll place that here. But let's finish doing what the card says. So find it in the state, place it, then reshuffle the deck. Place 3 Chig fighters in Vesta space. Place 5 Chig soldiers on Vesta. It's not looking too good for the Earth forces so far. All right. But the Earth forces do get to take their turn first this time. Alright, collect resources. Again, Earth only has Earth, so they just get 3 of each. And a Marine. And we know that the Chig has their home world. And they get a soldier, but then they also have Mars, which gives them 2 material, and they have Vesta, which gives them 2 material, so that's 4 more material. And they get 2 fuel and 2 fuel, so that's 4 more fuel. and they get 1 morale. Alright, spend resources. The Earth Forces are going to buy 1 ACM card and 1 grunt card. They'll buy 1 SA-43 and put it here. And I think that's it. The Chig Forces, they have a lot, so they're going to buy 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2 Chig fighters. And since they control this planet, they can put it adjacent to here. They're going to put them in here with Vanson. And they'll spend 2 morale to get 1 ACM and 1 grunt card. And I think that is all. I could put some more. They're going to spend 1, 2 to buy a morale to buy a Chig soldier and put it on Mars. Alright, Earth Forces had the lower event card, so they get to go first. So they're going to spend 1 action, and they're going to move both these fighter. Remember, for 1 action you can move all units from one place to the next for only 1 action, but that is going to cost them, well, they can't do it because they've only got 3 fuel. They can move 1 for 2 fuel, so they'll move west in there. Alright, for 1 action, they're going to attack these Chig fighters. Alright, and they have 1 ACM card, take that. They're going to play it before combat rolls. Make an additional attack roll with 1 SA-43 this combat round. They will make an additional attack roll with Vanson, since her, well, either Vanson or West both get +2 to their ACM, so it doesn't matter which one, we'll just say Vanson. And the Chigs will play this ACM card, play before combat rolls. Before the start of combat, a Chig satellite, sentry satellite, makes an attack roll against each SA-43. D4 hits on 4, so he gets to roll. This is before other combat rolls, so he gets to roll D4 against each one. Alright, we'll say this one's against West, and that is a miss, and this one's against Vanson, and that's a miss. So that just gets discarded. It didn't do him any good. Alright, West and Vanson are going to attack. They get to roll D10s, hit on 6+, but because of this card, make an additional attack roll. Well, they'll do that afterwards, so we may not even need it. Alright, well, those are both hits, so 6 and plus with their bonuses, so well, they may need the extra hit because this could be jinked by the SA-43. So they each took a hit, so they're each going to spend a fuel to jink. So they roll a D6 and jink on a 6. So that's not a jink. That's not a jink. They only get 1 opportunity to jink, so they both are destroyed. But because this is played before attack rolls, it was played, so it's discarded anyway. But they survive. The West and Vanson survive. So for my 3rd action, I'm going to move a carrier. It doesn't cost any fuel, which is lucky because I have 1, and they can move 2 spaces. So 1, 2. They'll move right there. I guess I could make another. My last action, I can make an attack, since they can attack an adjacent space against these fighters, so they're going to do that. I get to roll 5 D10s, hit on 5+. 1, 2, 3 hits. That's going to eliminate all of these Chig fighters. That's all 4 actions for the Earth Forces, so they're done. Alright, Chig player's turn. Now, one thing I don't think I went over in the rules overview, but once the Walden line is placed, even though there's currently no planets connecting or systems connecting the Chig homeworld to these other planets and systems. Once the Walden line's placed, it's kind of considered that the Chigs can move to a card adjacent to the Walden line, but it costs 4 fuel per vehicle to do that. So for the first action, the Chig carrier battleship group there is going to spend 1, 2, 3, 4, and they are going to move to Vesta, the first system on the other side of the Walden line. Now later, when there are the 3 cards, remember there has to be 3 cards that separate the Walden line from the Chig Holden world. Once those are placed there, then they have to spend regular movement to get over here. But this is just a mechanism I came up with to allow the Chigs to get over here to the Earth side prior to those systems being placed. But anyway, so he spent 1 action to move 4. Now he's going to spend another action, and he's going to move here. Now that costs 2 fuel, 1, 2. And he's going to spend his third action to attack the Saratoga. So he gets 5 dice, 5d6s, and he hits on 5+. So he just got 2 hits. So we'll get a token and mark it 2. Now the Saratoga rolls 5d10 and hits on 5+. So he got 1, 2, 3 hits. So 3 damage on the battleship group. Alright, so now because they're in range of each other, they're going to attack again. So the Chigs will roll. Oh, that's no good. They didn't get any hits. Remember, they hit on 5+, so now the Saratoga will fire back. And they get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits. That's gonna destroy the Chig battleship. So that didn't work out very good for them at all. And the fighter that was on them is obviously also destroyed. They still have 1 more action, but there's not really much they can do. What they need to do is build a transport and move some of these troops. You know, if they move some of these troops into Earth and attack it and defeat it, they could win. Now, a couple rules I didn't mention in the rules overview. Transport. Well, any space vehicle. Fighter or battleship or carrier, they can move into a sector with enemy ships, but they can't move through the sector with enemy ships. So they have to stop when entering a sector with enemy ships, and can't leave until a battle has occurred. Now, ISS ACP and Chig transports cannot enter a sector with enemy ships, although enemy fighters can enter a sector with Chig transports and ISS ACPs, and of course they can attack them. Then if they destroy them, then any troops they are carrying are killed. Now the Chig transports, sorry, I've got the sun is like putting these lines on here all of a sudden. The Chig transports can't fire back. They have no defense mechanism. The ISS ACPs, even though I haven't placed it, I didn't place it on here because during my play testing I came up with this. So I really need to add it on this play sheet, but I did put it in my rules. ISS ACPs can defend themselves. They can roll a d4. They can't initiate an attack You can't use an action to initiate an attack with an ISS-ACP, but if they're attacked, they can roll a D4 and hit with a D4, and if West is on an ISS-ACP, they can roll a D4 and hit on a 3 or 4. And if normally an ISS-ACP and Chig Transport can't make any Jink roll, but if Vanson is on an ISS-ACP and it takes a hit, if Vanson is on it, then it can make a Jink roll, a normal Jink roll. So I don't know. I think that's it. I think you get the gist of how the game plays. If you've never watched Space Above and Beyond, I definitely recommend it. Like I said, it was only one season. Of course, this was back when there were real seasons, and so it's like 23 episodes. It's not like how these streaming seasons are now, where they consider 8 and 10 episodes a season. But like I said, it was only one season. I don't know why. I think it was on Fox. You know how they killed Firefly or whatever after one season, but this was prior to Firefly. But I thought it was really good, and I recommend if you. It may be on YouTube. I have a DVD set, but anyway, that's the game. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.